So I'm going. You can say, where you're from,
Okay.
what you are. Start from the beginning.
Okay. Michael Hall, born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. Left Baltimore City when I was right at 27 years old. Moved to a place called Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Man, thinking back now, where my head was at, where my life was going at the time I left Baltimore, is scary. This story here is to add some worth and bring some attention to Black fatherhood and how it's getting neglected. My mom passed June 14, 1988. I was 14 years old. Dad wasn't really in my life. So at that time, being born in 72, my mom passed in 88. At that time, especially with black men, the narrative was still out that men don't cry. Nobody really told me about how to deal with emotions, so forth. So when I didn't come from an abusive home, my mom and grandmother did the best they could. With a young, energetic, it's funny I say energetic because I remember a time, I guess I might have been 9 or 10 years old, my mother took me to the hospital, and the doctor that she took me to at the time said I was hyperactive. So her and my grandmother opted to take me to a black doctor for a second opinion. The black doctor said, ain't nothing wrong with him, he's just a healthy nigga. At that time, they promoted kids outside, running, playing, but the white doctor ironically said I was hyperactive, and that's when Ritalin and so forth and so on was really prevalent in the predominantly black and brown communities. So again, come up with a good home, played outside all day till the street lights come on. If y'all come up in the generation I came up in, when the street lights came on, get your behind in the house. But I remember, I think I was 12. I went to the doctor with my mother. I didn't know why we were there. We were sitting in the doctor's office. He stepped out for a second and closed the door behind him a little bit. He left it cracked a little bit. And I'm sitting beside my mother. I was on her left side. I was closest to the door. She was on my left side. And somehow I heard the doctor in the hallway talking to another doctor. And I overheard him tell the doctor he was speaking to that my mother wasn't gonna make it. My mother, for some reason, turned around and looked over at me, and I was boiling. I was contemplating, at that time, again, didn't teach black boys how to handle emotions. I heard his doctor saying my mother's not gonna make it. I'm ready to hurt him. So my mother actually said, what's wrong, honey? And I told her, she's strong black mother, strong. She said, it's gonna be all right. She didn't cry, she grabbed me, held me. Of course, after a while, a few minutes later, he came in and gave my mother the news, and we went home. For the life of me, from the time I was 12 up until the day my mother passed, most of my life is a blank or a blur. I don't remember a whole lot of it. Just remember I got real violent, fell in love with the streets, so forth and so on, but for the life of me, much of that life, I don't remember. I do remember when my mother passed, my grandmother woke me up around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, what's going on? I was laying on my stomach in my bedroom. She said, Mommy is gone. So I was like, okay, I'll lay back down. And she shook me again. She said, Mommy gone. So I got up, we left, went to the hospital. I don't think the reality that my mother had passed, I don't know if I really comprehended or could wrap my mind around it. I knew I was hurt, but you know how you typically sit and meditate on some things? I never did that. It just, all I knew was she was gone, didn't wrap my mind around it, so forth and so on. But I remember my grandmother telling me, she said, Mommy, before she passed, was gonna have you arrested. She said, because my mother said she felt like it would have been safer for me to be in prison than in the streets. If you haven't been to prison, you really don't know what that says. If you've been to prison, then you can really hear the worth of that when you hear a family member specifically my grandmother, tell me that my mother felt like it would have been safer for me to be in prison than in the streets. As violent as Baltimore was, as violent as Baltimore detention centers was, Patuxent, but well, Cumberland wasn't open yet, Jessup Cut, Maryland House of Corrections, so forth and so on. Gladiator School, come in there, when you get your time, get a knife. But she felt like it would have been safer for me to be in prison than in the streets. After she passed, I became a maniac. The hurt. Today I tell, as I go into 9 schools and I have a fatherhood initiative in the city I currently live in, which is Asheville, North Carolina, I often tell people, I say, I wasn't really a gangster. It may have appeared that way, I say, but I was hurt. And if you don't know how to deal with that pain, the old narrative, hurt people hurt people. So in my escapades and my decision-making, unhealthy and destructive decision-making, ironically, nobody ever stopped to talk to me. Nobody ever stopped to say, hey, what's going on? What's the problem? It just, as I look back today in the work that I do, this is one of the reasons why I'm after fathers, particularly men, then fathers, because I understand we go through pain sometimes and there's nobody to tell. With all of the changing narratives in society, particularly if you do your research, some of the narratives that we hear are more dominant in America than they are in other countries. For instance, the gender issue. Y'all do your research and go look at what the leader in Africa said regarding that lifestyle in his own country. But yet, in all of that, they still tell men, oh, you can handle it. They still, I remember people telling me since I did some time, came home from prison, and people say, you got soft. I said, no, I didn't get soft. I said, no, when I was soft is when I was a problem. Today, I talk to a number of men, from those in the professional world, to those who are in the streets, to those who are active in addiction, homeless, and so forth and so on. But the thing that I hear often, no matter where they at in life, is nobody cares. And so you got to examine that when I say nobody cares, because there are a lot of mental health organizations out, so forth and so on. But many of the men have explained to me that I can relate to from my own past is when they say nobody cares, nobody's listening to me in an effort to help me to find myself. People will listen so you can become what they think you ought to be. So I don't need nobody to tell me why I needed simmer down on my masculinity. No, I don't need to hear that from anybody. I didn't need to hear that. I needed somebody to hear what I was going through. I'm a man, biological male. Scientifically, I produce a lot of mass. I got a deep voice, so that means I produce a lot of teeth. I like that. But what I needed was somebody to say, hey, I understand what you're going through. Hey, how can I help? But nobody did that. All the churches when I came up in Baltimore, you know what the men did when I was in the streets? They see me coming, they cross the street. Today, as I look back, Gray turned 51 years old, left Baltimore right at 27 years old, I say, so y'all profess to believe in this, that, and the third, and have this mission, so forth and so on, from the one that y'all claim to follow, but nobody never stopped to talk. So what do you expect me to do? What do you expect me to do? I ask this to people, they say, why would you do something like that? Well, what other choice did I have? Everything around me, part of the agenda in the black and brown community, everything around me looked like what I became. So what did you expect me to do? There are situations that we enter into where we literally don't have a choice. I know we don't hear this term quite often anymore about we're products of our environment, but we are. If you take a pit bull and put him in a healthy, nurturing environment, guess what? He don't become an aggressive dog. He'll protect his owner. But if you put him in a situation that's different, not healthy, not nurturing, then what does he become? He becomes the dog that you fear. So if you take a man and put him in an unhealthy, destructive situation, and that's all he sees, what do you expect to happen? I've had people tell me, say, well, there had to be somebody that you saw that was different than what everybody else looked like. I said, I agree. I said, let me ask you something. If you're sitting in a room and the wall is splattered with colors, and most of the colors are one color, but there's one spot, what do you typically set your focus on? You might look at that, say it's a wall with a bunch of black spots and you see one pink spot. What do you typically set your focus on? What will you begin to emulate? The movies said the same thing. The music said the same thing. Then they started coming out with videos that emulated or projected what the movies and the music were saying. And then society and the agendas that are set in place to keep a man out of the home. What do you expect him to do? Or now, instead of being a masculine man, they want you to be, I can speak for they want you to be a sissy. I'm the guy, I'm not changing etymology just to make sure everybody's comfortable, because if that's the case, if we're going to really be the kind of people that, well, let's be careful what we say, then be careful what you say when it comes to somebody like me. But nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. So here's my story. Born 1972, Baltimore, Maryland, to my mother, Michelle Yvonne Neal. Lived in a home with her, my grandmother, Mary Lou Brayboy, my uncle, Richard Howard Neal, and Kenneth Howard Neal. Richard Howard Neal is my grandfather. My aunt, Audrey Janine Neal. That was my household. My mother, my grandmother, my uncle, and my aunt. I was the first child. I was the first grandchild. I was my mother's first child, her only child, and my grandmother's first grandchild for right at 10 years. Oh, the love. When I came home when they brought me home from the hospital, I can remember this because it was told to me. I didn't have a stuffed animal. I didn't have a Tonka truck, so forth and so on. I had a dog. His name was Beaver. A mutt, but he was my buddy. Plum mutt until you mess with me. See, I kind of relate to DMX testimony about his life because Beaver was my buddy. Was smart, grandmother, mother raised me in church, but there was some things going on in my home that I was oblivious to until now that I'm older. My uncle was the only male figure I had. My dad wasn't really around. I knew who he was, but he wasn't intricate or intimate in my life. In hindsight, the only time I look back now, the only time he really came around was to bounce up and down on my mama. And y'all can say, oh, that was so, but that's what all other men he saw. See, what I became was the same thing he was. He did what he saw all the other men doing. And I'm a guy that believe in the old Motown and so forth and so on with 4-part harmony. But even as my dad was young, and all he heard was Papa was a Rolling Stone and so forth and so on, and Rick James, and singing about the infidelity, not being faithful to your wives, and reading Iceberg Slim, and watching the movies that were put out there purposely to change a man's mind and redirect him from being the kind of man he was created to be for his family. What options did he do? What other options did he have? See, my dad went to the military, but do your history. Come on, man. A black man then going to the military, and then when they came back home, so my dad fought in Nam. Do y'all research on how you got treated after you came back to America? So watch this. Coming back to America after fighting in Nam, not only did he have to come back and deal with the racism, but now he had to come back and deal with all of the slander, the mockery, and the hatred being projected to him from the citizens in America because of the stories that were put up about what they were doing to people in Vietnam. But they were carrying out orders. So that's one of my images as a male. Then I have my uncle, who actually went to federal penitentiary when I was 9. The only thing I remember my uncle telling me one day is, boy, men don't talk that much. And over the years, that became a motto for me. To the point that now that I'm married, I remember my wife telling me, why you don't talk? Well, my uncle said, men don't talk that much. And in the lifestyle I was engaged in, you didn't tell nobody what you were doing. And that trained me, or I got indoctrinated with keep it bottled up. Don't tell nobody. So at 9 years old, the only male figure in my home went to federal penitentiary for multiple counts of murder. And I got older and found out what his police report was saying, and I won't go into it, but some of the things that he was into, after I read that report and hearing stories from my grandmother once I was older and could understand what she was telling me, I became like that thing. There were some spiritual things in place. But even with my uncle, my grandfather wasn't the best man. Come up in a town where my grandfather would put his children's head between their legs and spank them. That's punishment. So what did my uncle become? The only male figure I had, what did he become? So what was I to become? And some people say, well, good mother, I had a good mother. I come from a single home. Yeah, I get that. But let me explain something to you. There's a difference between coming from a good home and teaching a boy how to be a man. My wife and I have a thing in our home that we abide by. I have 2 girls. She said, but I can't teach them about manhood and what a man ought to be. I can teach them what I want, what I would like for them in a man. They said, but with you in the house, they see it. That wasn't there. That wasn't present in my home. When I started tripping, and my grandmother didn't know what to say. See, I'm a guy, so I'm already strong, I'm bullheaded, I'm determined, so forth and so on. He didn't know what to do. Then when I went looked out in the community amongst my friends, as I started getting older, wow, these men got power. These men got money. So forth and so on. So that was attractive to me because psychologically I was looking for a father. Nobody wants to admit that. Deep down inside, a child will look for both parents. If the mother's around, and a whole lot of our men, we've been mothered to death. Agendas, systems set in place to tear up the homes in black and brown community predominantly, yes. And as a result of mothers that had to work more than they were designed to because...
But also work differently.
Right, differently, absolutely.
And trying to be a father too.
Right.
A woman can't.
It can't. I got a little cousin who has a son. His son's mother died not long after his son was born from an aneurysm. He says that he's a single father. He said, but I could never be his mother. I look back. So, again, my uncle went to federal penitentiary when I was 9. Once I got older, kind of find out he was involved with some things spiritually, so forth and so on. Matter of fact, I'm going to keep it raw. So I remember my grandmother telling me, so she came to the kitchen door in the house I grew up in and was calling my uncle's name. He was at the stove cooking. Y'all got to hear me. So some people write this off, but this is something that actually happened. My grandmother told me that she went to the kitchen door and called his name 3 times and he didn't answer. So she walked away. So later that day she went to ask him, so how come when I came to the kitchen door and called you, you didn't answer? Per her story, she said that my uncle said, because Satan came up to the window and said, if you come over there, throw that hot pan of grease on you. So this is the man, until I was 9 years old, who we lived in the same house, and whatever he was into, see, I don't think we understand what goes on with us spiritually. So whatever he was involved in, once he left, it attached itself to me. Because listen, I don't care, with all the technology we have in the world, we are still tribal people at the core. And with that, the foundation of every tribe throughout history is the family unit. First started with the alpha male and the alpha woman, the father, mother, chief, or whatever you want to call them. And from them, the welfare, the health, the success of the tribe, community, neighborhood goes on. So when my uncle leaves, who is the only male, guess who moves into play? Me. I'm the only male in the house till my two little cousins were born. But I'm the only male in the house. So while I'm trying to figure out how to be a man, you know, you got all the black power going on back then, the Panthers and so forth and so on, more Science Temple, and I'm hearing all this stuff about how to be a man, and all of that is conveyed through the lens of people who are trying to figure it out themselves. And I knew respect my mother, respect my grandmother, respect my aunt, but at the same time, I didn't know how to be a man. See, let me say something. There's grace when we mess up. True indeed. We mess up. Yahweh, the creator of heaven and earth, has grace. Well, I think we have hit a place in society because of certain narratives and systems and agendas that have been in play that we have allowed our minds to believe that grace supersedes design. See, take an XX and an XY to create a child. That's by design. It take an XX and an XY to raise a child. Now, either the child get raised from a healthy perspective or an unhealthy perspective. Whatever the case may be, the child has to be raised. My daughters, my wife and I's daughters, need to see the operation of estrogen and testosterone in our home from a healthy perspective. People will say, well, whatever reasons we come up with or trauma and so forth and so on, or why your home is the way it is. Let me share something which I teach in my fatherhood coaching groups. So for 9 months, however long a woman is in labor, she goes through something that we as men, biological men, would never experience. So watch this. So people say, well, my baby daddy left. So forth and so on. So here's something. My wife and I talked about this early part of the year. I said, I don't get a pat on the back for being a good dad now. One, because I remember when I wasn't a good dad. I was a deadbeat, as they call it. I've learned how to become the very thing that I wasn't. I said, but watch this. I said, but I don't get a pat on the back because I was designed to do that. Now, even the design has to be molded. It just doesn't naturally. You want a healthy plant, you got to have healthy soil. You got to have water, so forth and so on. It is not. You're not going to get a harvest if it isn't nurtured. So in a home, a child needs both. So I told my wife, I said, even with a woman. So for 9 months, however long a woman is in labor, she go through something that a man could never experience. I said, but here's the thing, here's the same principle. The woman don't get to do this because it's by design. It's not the woman is stronger and the man is weaker, or in instances where the man appears to be stronger and the woman is weaker. It's things that we're better at because it's by design. So for 9 months, however long a woman's in labor, she gets to bond with that child in a way the father can't. So when the child is born, guess what the father's typically doing? Playing catch up. Biologically, psychologically, while the woman is in labor, is pregnant and in labor the entire time she's bonding with the child, if the man has proper education and instructions and so forth and so on, he's bonding with the mother. His affinity and affection grows towards the mother. That does not mean he doesn't love the child, but it's different because the child isn't in his womb. Isn't it funny that the seed of the child proceeds out of the man, but it's incubated inside the womb of a woman? That's why you typically hear mama bear more than you hear papa bear. So when you see men flee, something is off during the time. He either hasn't really bonded with the mother of his child in a healthy way, so when she does give birth, he doesn't flee. Typically, he has not bonded, so he flees. And from a mental health perspective, as human beings, we are all fight or flight. So when my mother and father had me, my father wasn't bonding with my mother. So when I was born, guess what he did? He fled. My grandfather, the father of my mother, my aunt and my uncle, he fled. I saw my grandfather from time to time. He wasn't really helping raise the children. So he fled. So now the woman is forced to raise, or my mother and grandmother were forced to raise me the best they could. And kudos to women to do the best they can with the situation that they have. I applaud, but that does not supersede or nullify or diminish or snuff out what the design is.
Which is to be
Both. You need mother and father. So, when my uncle goes to federal penitentiary when I was 9, at that time I didn't know what was going on. I just know he was gone. But in hindsight, I look back now when I was 9, I can see myself sitting on the porch with one of my best friends. I just know he gone to prison. So from 1978, seeing that go on in the communities with black men predominantly, men would go on to war, going to Nam and so forth and so on, coming back, dealing with their own trauma from being in combat and not knowing how to handle it. So at that time, there was no real therapy, cultural therapy, let me put it that way, in the black and brown community for men that were coming back. And let me share something most people don't know. You do your research. I might be off a few years with my ear. Around in the 1800s, there was a woman by the name of Alice Bailey. She worked with the U.S. government. She had a 10-point plan to how to change the culture. One of the points in her plan was to tear down the family unit. Why? Why in the 1800s was there an agenda to tear down the family unit? Let's speed up. During civil rights. Why did they make a stipulation that, hey mother, you can get some public assistance, as it was falsely called, as long as the father ain't in the picture? Which is crazy. You talking about as hard as it was to get a job back then, is you're going to tell a mother, well, if you get him out of the house, we'll help you. See, as we get into this video and do the segments, I'll start breaking down and really divulging deep into some of these points, and you can see how the agenda has never changed. Do you really think what they call a feminist movement, do you really think it's for the betterment of our home? You know how many women I talk to say, how many black women and brown women out there now say, I don't need a man. Let's go back to design. My friends, associates, and people that know me know what I believe. So the creator of the heavens and the earth created a man and a woman, placed them in a garden. Let me add this to it. He gave them both dominion. They needed each other to rule. It wasn't the man said, well, I'm running the garden and you stay at home. No, that wasn't the case. I know we got this narrative out today where, so there was a design set. And slowly, progressively throughout the years, it's been tweaked. They've been changing it. So now we have this feminist movement. Watch this. Black women, my sisters. Everybody celebrated the Madam C.J. Walker movie. First black millionaire, female millionaire. Let me ask you a question. What happened to her and her husband? I've asked black women this, well, he got jealous. Okay. Rightfully so. So some of y'all in the mental health world deal with trauma, resiliency, and so forth and so on. Why did he get jealous? Well, there was a narrative back then during the time Madam C.J. Walker and her husband was alive that said a man is supposed to be the only breadwinner, the woman is supposed to stay home. See, right then they were already tearing down. So when she gets successful, he's pushed, and now here comes the jealousy behind a narrative that was put out of what a man's supposed to be in his home. And how many of y'all saw the movie Sparkle back in the day? His jealousy came about when I can't remember if she was his girlfriend or wife. She got successful as a singer to the point he beat her to death in the bed. The jealousy stemmed from, I'm supposed to be, when no, you both supposed to be. See, when you see me, you see my wife. You don't just see Mike. You see my wife, because my wife and our partnered roles makes it easy for me to even be here and do this documentary right now. Because it would be tough if we weren't partners. So when my mother and grandmother, after the only male role model I had, intimate male role model I had, went to federal penitentiary when I was 9 years old, now I'm looking for a male, and there isn't one. Then my aunt meets, I got two male cousins that my aunt had. Their father, he the next thing to come that's in the house. I look at him, guess what he is? He is 90 degrees in Baltimore, Maryland, walking down the street with a trench coat on and two sawed-offs. That's what I see in the house. So because that void in me, I cling to him, even though he was unhealthy. Then when he starts going to prison and he gets addicted to heroin, I look around in the community and I see my buddies' dads who had two-parent household, but guess what they are? They kingpins. Oh yeah, they had the nicest stuff. Their parents were da-da-da, and they gave off the appearance that, but then I thought, I get in the streets and start finding out, I said, so watch this, my uncle, my two cousins' dad, they gone. So now I look and see my friend's dad, and I'm like, And I'll add, there was one friend I had, he had a good dad, hardworking, so forth and so on. But I go back to what I saw most of the time. But even then, none of them would sit down and say, hey, let's talk. Let's talk about what you're going through. Let's talk about what you're dealing with. To this day, I'm 51 years old. My mom passed when I was 14. Getting ready to turn 51 in 21 days, still no one has asked, hey man, what was it like? Or back then, hey man, you need somebody to talk to. Thankfully I'm older, the principles I live by, thankful for my wife, more vocal with her and we communicate, but still nobody has ever asked.
Also, they perhaps didn't know.
No, they didn't know.
They didn't know either.
Men don't cry.
Right.
So you a man, you can handle it. Okay, well, if you say so, but as a human being, watch this, we're given tear ducts for a reason. I can remember back in the day when people see me cry, they would leave, they would run. I'm like, uh-oh. So you're telling me, what are these tear ducts for then? And when I do cry, who's going to teach me how to handle this emotion? And all of that was an agenda. I'm talking about, again, I was born in 1972. All that was portrayed on TV about black men, listen, yeah, I came up thinking Good Times was a good show. Today, no. Now from the perspective of family, yes. But that wasn't the image I needed to see. Neither was Bill Cosby. Typically in my community, most families were not going to be like that. They didn't have the opportunities, so forth and so on. So when my household broke down, because my mom dealt with trauma because her dad, my grandfather, wasn't what he needed to be. So guess what? My father became attractive to her. And, of course, the domino effect. But we don't stop and think, so wait a minute. Why is the worth of family not addressed? I ask men, I go to the county jail and do a mentorship group. And one of the things I ask them, I said, what's the first thing you're going to do when you get out? And I'm not getting off track. I'm staying with from the time my uncle went to prison when I was 9. I said, what's the first thing you're going to do when you get out? Well, I'm going to get me some. I said, why? I said, let's just really think about it. Why can't you wait? Why do I bring it up? My mother, because of the image that my grandfather portrayed before her, was not healthy. She found my father attractive. As a result, they lay together. As a result, they had me. And of course, as we get into the story, you'll hear what happened. But the same question I propose to those men in the county jail, I propose to y'all to listen to this documentary. Before you offer your body and perhaps end up bringing your child into the world, ask yourself, why can't you wait? Because there's a chance you may bring a child into the world. And do you really want to take the chance of both of you attracted to one another from an unhealthy perspective, then take the risk of bringing a child into an unhealthy situation where you say, well, I'll wear protection. But wait a minute. See, the breakdown of the family starts before the man and the woman even conceive, even give birth to a child. It starts with a narrative. All of these images from the time I was a kid on up to now, and it's worse now, all these images that are portrayed to us on television, music, so forth and so on, condition our minds to begin to seek for fantasies that we'll never obtain. That in turn, not only bigger than breaking down the household, but you never get to establish one. You never get to establish one. It's so, I'm talking about, I listen to ministers and this upheaval of promoting staying single. Why? You got to break it down. Why? Instead of doing the work, getting educated to get the right narrative, get a healthy mindset, a lifestyle so you create a healthy family, instead we entertain all these other things that cause us to deviate from that plan. So my mom and grandmother, again, did the best they could. But remember, the only male role model I had in my house went to federal penitentiary when I was 9. Then the next one ended up going to penitentiary and addicted to heroin. Then after he left, I started looking in the communities for others. Didn't really know I was looking for a male role model. And all the ones I saw, they were, Yeah. So in all that, watch this now. So in all that, June 14th, 1988, my mama passed. June 14th, boy, y'all gotta follow it. Pay real close attention. June 14th, 1988, I was 14 years old, my mother passed. June 14th, 1989, I met the mother of my children. You know why she was attractive to me? Because there was a void. When I got older, didn't realize I was looking for a male role model, but in those searches, I clung to unhealthy men and became a drug dealer and all that other stuff. My mom passed, now that void is there, so I'm looking for, I didn't really love the mother of my 2 oldest daughters. She filled the void. So guess what happened when we had our first daughter? I didn't leave my first 2 daughters' life immediately. The mother of my children, my 2 oldest children, and now we lived with my grandmother because the mother of my 2 oldest daughters, her name is Veranda. Veranda's mother died. So my grandmother moved her in. Of course, my grandma was a Christian, so she was like, y'all, you'll be shacking up somewhere at the Job Corps. Listen, I'm still dealing with the trauma of no dad. And my trauma is worse because I saw him, but I didn't know him. Then mom passed. Now I'm looking, okay, I gotta find something to deal with this pain. See, my life of addiction started long before substance. I was trying to cope. So then my second daughter was born. I'm still in the house, but then after a while, the mother, Veronica and I got grown. And we told my grandmother, we moving out. We going to live on our own. Then when our relationship came to an end, I ended up homeless, addicted to heroin, trying to cope. See, it was pain, trying to cope. The next thing you know, I'm no longer involved in the life of my children. Not saying I'm done with them, I don't care about them. No, it's so much going on that I didn't realize at the time that when I left Baltimore City, I said, I got to get away. And we're fight or flight. I fled. Again, guess what? Nobody still stopped and said, hey, Mike, wait a minute. Come talk to me. What's going on? See, we ain't got this issue with men dropping the ball. It didn't just start. Do you know we were, as black and brown people in this nation, we were the strongest when we were slaves? Because we kept the family tight. We knew we was all we had. That's why our ancestors in this nation made so many children. They knew we got to keep the line tight. We got to keep the legacy. So we need offspring. Today, you think you're going to keep a legacy because you work for $250,000. No. So, when I left Baltimore, it was pain. And people can say whatever they want. See, look, get off drugs, so forth. So when I did that before I went to prison I got off drugs for a little while before I went to prison. But guess what? Nobody still, I was clean. But was I a man? No. I was gainfully employed. But was I a man? No. Because even in the times of being clean and being gainfully employed, still didn't deal with those false narratives that were portrayed to me about what a man was supposed to be. See, I can recall hearing, I'm too aggressive. But I do the science. I got a deep voice. My wife says I don't know how to whisper. I can't whisper. I got a deep voice and I produce a lot. I got a lot of mass. So that means I produce a lot of testosterone. So scientifically, I'm different than a lot of men. You want to hear something that
you are like they used to be.
Right. Like they used to be. Yes. When you talk, you thunder. Right. People told me since I've been home, I've been out of prison now almost 7 years. People hear me say, "Man, you're a motivational speaker. Your voice it commands attention." Y'all remember? So again, I'll get ready to 51. Watch this now. Yeah, I'm telling you, listen, y'all, listen. I've done so much research on this. Listen, when we were coming up, and I'm talking to everybody and the brother who's filming this, Renato, remember when we came up and every group had a bass singer and a baritone? The Shy-Lights, the Delphonics, the Temptations. Then all of a sudden we got into this place where it was just a lead singer. Remember Boys and Men, for some of y'all that's not as old as we are. Then all of a sudden, wasn't no more bass and baritones. Why do you think that is? Why do you think they took that away?
Yeah. And also the rock music, the popular music.
Yes.
If you look at the way they were singing, it was definitely not masculine.
No.
I mean?
All that screaming and...
I couldn't figure out why they sing like that.
Right.
Why they do their voice like that? That's not the natural way. They're not like that.
Right.
They don't talk like that in
No.
normal situation. They don't.
Right. Look, sports. Now, I'm a football fan, but y'all can figure out I'm a Ravens fan. And I agree to some point that, football needed to be changed a little bit so the players would live longer, so forth and so on. I forget the name of the movie that Will Smith starred in, talking about the concussions that players would experience. But no, but watch this. Today I feel like Lawrence Taylor. Know why? Back then we said he was a man's man. Of course I love Ray Lewis because he was a man's man. Take the NBA. NBA's soft now. Just come on. It's soft. It's soft. If you're my age or in that realm, it was tougher. It was tougher. Men were taught to grind. Or take in the work world. How many brick masons you know? I was certified master mason by the Department of Labor. How many men you know aspire to be welders? You ain't got to go that route. That's just my language. I love building stuff. How many black male teachers you know? How many brown male teachers you know? Preserve the community. Or
fathers.
Right. How many fatherhood organizations have you even heard of? Not from a chauvinistic perspective, but from the perspective of, hey, we're going to tighten the family, because I'm going to take a quote from a preacher by the name of Tony Evans. If you got a dysfunctional man, you have a dysfunctional home. If you got a dysfunctional man and a dysfunctional home, then you have a dysfunctional community. If you have a dysfunctional man and a dysfunctional home and a dysfunctional community, then you have a dysfunctional city. You have a dysfunctional man, and a dysfunctional home, and a dysfunctional community, and a dysfunctional city, then you have a dysfunctional state. You keep going, dysfunctional state.
Society, dysfunctional state,
dysfunctional
right. Nation.
Nation, world.
Yeah. And they're doing it.
So it's surprising that I remember a buddy of mine, I guess I was 17. No, I might have been 19. He was really trying to, I remember the time I was trying to be a rapper and I was DJing, and he was trying to get a record deal. He made beats and so forth and so on. But he was really into conscious hip hop. So I've been in communication with him since I've been out of prison. Of course, at the time, I was 19. Since I've been out of prison for almost 7 years, I've communication with him. I was like, man, you remember when we used to DJ? We trying to get him? He said, yeah, man. He said, it's crazy. He said, because I know guys that got into the music business, and he said there was an agenda set out to make sure conscious hip hop didn't move forward. Why? I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, because it would have strengthened the community.
The community.
Yeah, he said instead they pushed all this, kill each other, shoot each other, so forth and so on. When he told me that, I started writing in this book I'm writing, and I said, wait a minute. So my generation created NWA. And at the time I started writing, that's where I started from. But then I started meditating more. And as I was talking about, from the time I was 9 years old, my uncle, my biological uncle, the mother of my two cousins, the men in the community, my grandfather. But then I took it back. I'm like, wait a minute, they go before NWA. And listen to the music that was put out, the movies that was put out. Because see, it started before in New Jack City. It started before Boys in the Hood, so forth and so on. The Iceberg Slim movies and so forth. So I'm like, so they pushed this. Excuse me. Even though the best we had as images in regards to TV shows was Good Times, Bill Cosby, not even Welcome Back Carter, What's Happening, because Dad wasn't around. But Good Times, I'm sure that was more per my memory, Good Times and Bill Cosby. So you had, we started slowly we started not seeing that no more. We started hearing more violent hip hop, as they tried to call it, reality rap. But let me tell you something. If you listen to something long enough, you'll become it. Though you might not go out and do the particular thing. So let me share something with you. I've asked the man, I said, so that music, he said, yeah, my kids are but my kids are doing fine. Let me ask you something. Why would you yourself listen to or allow your children to listen to such music. Why? It's unhealthy. So I went back, I said, man, it's not, so I said, like I said, man, it's not just a you fault because we planted seeds. And the universal law through the Hebrew text is you're going to reap what you sow. So we planted seeds. So my generation planted seeds in NWA, Coogee Rap, the MOPs and so forth and so on. And now here goes the harvest. But we point to the youth, but forget we planted these seeds. So we go all the way back. And as far as you can start researching and looking at trends and how things went in society, you listen, you remember the Matrix, the blue or the red? Today I say don't take neither one of them. But you start researching and say, wait a minute, World War II, and this is where you see it's not a black and white. Yes, predominantly it happens more in the black and brown community, but it's not just black, brown. It's not just black and brown. So World War II comes. They send me into war. Ask me for a war that was not for the betterment of any people.
No worries.
No, none. So watch this. So men out the war, they're losing their lives. Wives are home. Do your research. The wives started having to go into the warehouse and make weapons. So their husbands and so forth and so on are out to combat so long, the mothers gotta eat. Y'all better hear this and listen closely. And I'm gonna speed up. So by the time some of the men come back, and some of the men never made it, they died. They ended up getting killed. So the mother's single, black, brown, and white. But even then, by the time some of them come back, they tell the man, we don't need you. I learned how to raise little Johnny by myself. It was a scheme. The whole time. Look at your commercials today. This 2023. How many commercials do you see with a two-parent home? Or if you do see it, how many of them black and brown? My wife and our children are 4 and 2. People say, well, do your kids watch this? No. Our kids watch things where they see a two-parent home. Of course, the ABC cartoons and so forth and so on. I said, but I'm not allowing an image to be projected in their mind that shows, oh, mama is or daddy is. No, it's both. So by the time I'm 19, I'm strung out on trauma and coping with it the way I see every other, predominantly every other guy in my community dealing with it. Let's get this bag. Let's get this money. Ironically, when I started liking girls, the girls told me I ain't had enough money. Why did they say that? Because that's what the images that were portrayed and the agendas and the storylines. So I started hustling. But see, by the time I started hustling, see the trauma, dad, mom, so forth and so on, girls, you ain't got enough money. By the time I started getting money and they started finding me attractive, at that point, I'm like, my coping mechanism is I want y'all to fear me. So when they were attracted, by that time when they weren't really attracted to me, they just saw the money. 80, 90, 1990, velour sweatsuits and da-da-da-da, and that gold teeth in my mouth. I don't want you now. I'm a gangster. Fear me. Again, I was hurting. Hurting from dad.
You wouldn't want to show it, of course.
Yeah, so, I mean, by the time the 90s came, Renato, I'm watching Spencer for Hire. I see Hawk. That's the kind of man I want to be. Yeah. So a narrative. Didn't even realize what was happening to me psychologically.
And when you were in, was there anything that you could find that was positive?
inside.
Yeah.
When I went to prison, I was arrested December 6, 2002 for attempted murder and armed robbery.
Because there
No.
are people,
No. What some people would say, some people would beg to differ. But to answer your question, was there anything positive? The reason I say no is because while there were classes and stuff set up, what I came to grips with was I don't want to be a product for y'all. In my mind, I'm trying to get back to society and rekindle what fragment of relationship I may be able to gain with my oldest two daughters. So the thank you for a change, Napoleon Hill, all that, I ain't take none of that. Me personally, I come to believe in the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach. I divulged into the Word. I started viewing that belief system differently than typically American Christianity. And through that I got a sense of self-worth, and I realized, hey, you've created me to be somebody, and I have something to offer. Again, many people would beg to differ. They would say, well, I took these classes and and so forth and so on. You see, but there's a thin line between positivity that enables you to become who you were created to be, and positivity that enables you to become who society will feel comfortable dealing with. That's a big difference. Let me say that again. There's a difference between positivity that will enable you to become who you were created to be, or positivity that will enable you to become who society feels comfortable dealing with. It's like you just can't get along with everybody.
Domestication.
Right, domestication. You're not going to please everybody. So at this point in my life, I'm comfortable with who I am, and I'm fine with who is not comfortable with it. I'm not rude, not disrespectful, but if you feel that I'm not the guy that you would want to listen to, I'm fine with that. I am okay with that. See, because I remember a time in my life when I thought that the people that I saw the most, I needed to make them happy. I needed to make them feel, I needed to be accepted by them, so I became whatsoever. See, the applause of the people don't stir me. Today, at a point, you know what stirs me, Renato? Pleasing the Most High, and the applause of my wife, the applause of my two daughters, eventually the applause of my two oldest daughters who are at top. Right now, we're not in fellowship. See, I have to eat that. I have a fatherhood initiative. I have to often know what one of the things that keeps me moving forward. I'm not pushing this initiative out of trauma from a broken relationship with my oldest two daughters. No, I'm pushing this initiative because I know partly what happened with me, and I don't want other men to end up in the same position. Or I don't want other men to think because you pay the bills, that makes you a good dad. A couple of days ago, it was last week, I was sitting on the couch, Renato. My wife wasn't home yet, but my daughters were there. So I'm actually ready to open my laptop and start working on some stuff. And my 4-year-old said, hey, Daddy, come get on the floor with us. And I was like, no, Daddy, getting ready to work. As soon as I got it out of my mouth, it no matter, literally 3 to 5 seconds, I was going to reach and grab my laptop, and I changed my mind. I got on the floor. Now, what I was ready to work on brought in some financial gain. And I know there's a balance, but let me tell you something. I've seen deadbeat dads, as they call them. I've seen good dads drop the ball on this. When I got on that floor and started coloring with them, I said, this memory, I can never get back if I miss it. If I miss it. I know a lot of people, Renato, a lot of men are successful. And is it a challenge? Yes. But I say, At 5:30 we eat dinner together. Unless my wife and I come to an agreement. Well, okay, yeah. But at 5:30 we eat dinner together. Guess what mom and dad are at the table. Now people say, well, this is indoctrination, whatever you want to believe. Guess who prays at the dinner table when we get ready to eat? My 4-year-old and 2-year-old. My 4-year-old tells us, no, Daddy, let me pray. At 7:30 we go upstairs. The Bible study, prayer, we talk. I can't get that back. If I lose that, I can't get that back. And where they get to, I'm in the home. So does that mean they go down a destructive path? Not necessarily. You see, but what's going to happen is, as my daughters get older, your little son won't be able to trick them with flowers. No, why? Because daddy buy them flowers all the time. I hug my daughters all the time.
That's good.
We talk. If I raise my voice some, I apologize. I say, hey, daddy needs to find a better way to communicate with you. I say, hey, daddy will work on his emotional response as well. See, because I'm setting a standard. And I'm telling him, hey, no matter what society says, at 4 years old, I say, no matter what society says, you do not have to succumb to the agenda. And my wife and I are partners in that. See, she is not
very important.
Yes. My wife and I discuss what do we want them, what are we going to teach in the home. See, let me tell you something. I go into 9 schools and do coaching and mentorship and social skills training and crisis management and so forth and so on. Watch this now. And I believe there's a need for myself, Mr. Kevin Ellison, and Joe Green going to the schools, and we're part of an organization called My Daddy Taught Me That. Salute, kudos to Mr. Keenan Lake. Let me tell you something. It's not the school's job to raise your children. So I do remember coming up, my mom and my grandmother raised me, and the school just complimented what they were teaching me. The schools didn't, the daycare, the schools didn't raise me. Mother and father, mother and or father. It's not the school's responsibility to raise your child. Change your priorities, or else.
And that's why they're trying to get the parents now out of the situation.
Out of the, right.
That's crazy.
Right. Like, so, hold on. Listen to this. Listen. Your child spends 6 to 8 hours in school. So when they come home, you need to prioritize and sit down with your child and talk. What did they teach you today? Da 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 da. See, the authority in their life has to be you and the dad. I would love if everybody was married, mother and father. But if not, mother and father, you have to come to a place where you work out whatever differences you may have, be friends so you both can be the most influential people in the life of your children, or else you're going to lose them. Or else, come on now, I got 2 girls. They can't even cook, but you're going to tell me they have the ability to make the decision on what gender they are. Don't it? Listen, it's insanity, but they're going to funnel it through mental health. Just wait 15, 20 years ago and watch the trauma that comes about, the research of the trauma that comes about through this. And my children can't even pick their own bedtime. No. I'm gonna get away from my story for a minute. Fathers, listen to me. You have a divine responsibility to protect your children. If we strengthen the home, we're strengthening society. We're strengthening our communities. Let me share this. Thank you, Ronaldo, for saying I can be as raw as I want to be. And listen, I know some people's situations are different. I get it. I sold drugs. When I first started selling drugs, it was because I couldn't find a job because I had a record. and I wanted to take care of my children. But I remember the immaturity. I needed to go buy a double stroller, Renato. Instead, I went to the store and spent $100 on a bunch of Minnie Mouse clothes. To me, I did, but you know what I mean? So I get it. Some of y'all, some of your dads are doing what you think is the only thing you can do. I get it. Literally, I get it. I'm not here to render unrighteous judgment. What I am here to say is the decisions you're making, keep in mind the planting your seed. What's going to be the result? What is going to be the harvest in the life of your children as they get older? Because you can't keep stuff hidden but for so long. So let's just break down those that are in that lifestyle who have children. You got a 2, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old. So this is the thing my wife and I buy. We go to Walmart and so forth and buy them sneakers. You know why? They're going out to play. I'm not spending no money on no Jordans that they're going to run around in the mud in. So let me share something which put something out there that you may find offensive. Some of y'all may find offensive, but I really want you to think about it. Depending on the age of your children, you go buy them Jordans. They don't even know who Mike is. So who are you really buying them for? Because the kids don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care. You know why we got an issue with health and obesity in our communities? Because when we were young, Renato, we went outside and played. So we were active. Now with the kids, you letting the schools be their parents and the game. Why? The sneakers that you buy them is for your own pride. They don't care. And when they finally get to the point where they start saying, yeah, this is what I want, it's because you've created this. Let them be children. Don't rob your children of their childhood as a result of some foolishness that you've decided to entertain. I'm talking about my daughters, and we're not the perfect family. We are progressing and growing, and we're working towards being perfected. We're not perfect. My 4-year-old and 2-year-old, guess what they do when we go upstairs and lay in the bed while my wife for a while reading the Bible? They get their little book. They can't read, but they hear us read, so guess what they do, Renato? They can't read yet, but they saying stuff.
Understand the importance.
Yes, a book. They have leapfrogs. They don't spend a whole lot of time on them. Do they watch Coco Melon and Omo Berry and Dora? And thank God we passed Baby Shark. And yes, but guess what they get to do? They sit on the couch and we color. We play little games and stuff together. And the benefit of both of us being in the house is when mommy is tired and offline. I'm sorry, it's divine, Renato. When my wife is offline, I'm on. When I'm offline, she's on. So, you know what I mean? The union. So, why would I buy this stuff? It's for my own pride. Look at my kids. Okay, yeah. My kids got life insurance plan, more than one. Okay.
I think it's especially women that do that.
Yes.
They can show off to their friends.
Right.
You know, I don't think men are much into that.
Right. Some of the men I've talked to, I say, so why do you buy your kids Jordans? Well, then I said, well, get some sneakers from Payless. Well, they ain't got a Payless no more. Shoe Carnival, let them kids go outside and play. Well, the community said, for why ain't the community safe? So the communities get unsafe because we make them unsafe.